Jeannie, we'd like to welcome you officially to Happy at Work. And this is our new podcast. It's all about empowering workers, bringing positivity in the workplace, how to make workers happier, more motivated. And given everything you're doing at E&Y, I think this is going to be like the perfect place for you to talk about everything you're doing there. So maybe you could introduce yourself and we could just start talking.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jack. I'm excited to be here today. My name's Ginnie Carlier, as you said. My official title is EY America's Vice Chair of Talent. But honestly, that really encompasses a lot. I oversee all of the talent function and all the HR vertical for North and South America. But really what's embedded in that right now and is really front of my agenda or top of my agenda is really, how we're going to work post-pandemic and really, developing our leaders to be successful kind of in the new world post-pandemic, and really looking at what is going to, drive, motivate, and really earn the trust of our workforce.
So Jenny, I'll start us off. It's great to have you on the show. And within EY, with all this change, are there any new opportunities that EY is seeing like, hey, we could get something really good out of all this change? Are there any opportunities that you've been spotting with all this change?
Well, what's interesting, Michael, is that when we we are looking at the way we're going to work post-pandemic, and we're calling it EY way of working. And it's now affectionately called EY Wow. And when we started on that journey, we started pretty early. In May of 2020, our CEO challenged us as an organization to not just survive what we were in the midst of, but to really thrive from it and think about how we might be able to really accelerate our strategic agenda around, transforming the way we deliver services, transforming the way we work as teams. And so that was sort of, what got us started on this journey on EY Wow. And so, our philosophy at that point was, well, what are all the things that our people are missing? So what was the best that we had pre-pandemic? And as we evolve and, again in May, no one knew that we'd be sitting here, 16 months later, still having conversations about the pandemic. But, what are we learning in the pandemic, and take the best of both of those, harness them, and really develop the way that we want to, show up for our clients, how we want to deliver our services. So, if I look at, what happened during the pandemic, I think it showed us that everyone brings their best selves to work in a different way. And we need to be able to create an environment, if you will, in which people have the ability to bring their best selves to work. They feel empowered to talk about how they bring their best selves to work. And, and we showed we can do it. We can flex to it. So I would say that was probably one of the, I think, best things that came out, if you will, of the pandemic from just a work standpoint. I also think it showed us, which you've probably seen in our recent study, the leadership behaviors that are really important to the workforce. I think it uncovered that really quickly. I think we were evolving towards it, but I think the pandemic and then certainly the social justice movement highlighted and spotlighted that, empathy, making sure that we're getting to know our team members, not just leading them and inspiring them, but we're getting to know them and understanding them and showing compassion, and not feeling like you have to have all the answers. These are leadership behaviors. Empathy is such an important leadership behavior that I think got uncovered pretty quickly in the pandemic.
That's great. Have you seen a change in the mindset of people in your organization now that you've kind of gone on this journey?
Oh, absolutely. When I talk to our people and it's very clear that they're looking for an employer or a place of work that is focused on them holistically. And when I say that, it's personally and professionally. We were all about what was happening in the four walls of an organization, and we felt we could control that before the pandemic. But there were no walls during the pandemic. And so it became very clear that the expectations of our professionals were, I want to feel I'm cared for holistically. And I also want to know that you care about my family, because what's happening in my household is having a direct impact on me, personally and professionally as well. And let's face it, our leaders were going through a lot of the exact same challenges that our professionals were. So they were feeling it firsthand. And I think recognizing the importance of this empathy skill that I keep referring to.
So I love, Ginny, that you're talking about empathy. This is actually a space I've been in for the past probably 8 to 9 years. I used to work with a neuroscientist out of Mass General. We used to train doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals in empathic communication skills. And it's usually surprising for people that it's a muscle and they can actually learn to be empathic. And if you practice it, you can gain these skills. And usually the person that you're talking to, even if you can't put yourself in their shoes, which is the definition of empathy, you can at least make them feel like you do. Mm-hmm. And you still have the same kind of physiological impact and are able to build that trust. But when it comes to empathy, it's really about emotional intelligence and building that self-awareness and taking care of yourself and recognizing things like burnout, because that's when we lack empathy, is when we're burnt out ourselves and we can't really give that energy to other people. So what is EY doing as far as, with this empathic leadership, part of the whole kind of new well-being piece? How are you helping employees that might start feeling symptoms of burnout, or help them to develop those skills and emotional intelligence and self-awareness so they can recognize when their tank is empty and they don't have a lot to give?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And one of the things that, I don't want to, I feel like I don't want to brag about what EY has done, but I will tell you, we've been focused on well-being for decades. If I look back to when I was a staff and senior, we were already having these, go to your employee assistance program. Now we call it EY Assist, but it's okay to ask for help. We were having those discussions when I was, a senior 2 decades ago. But I think, what really in the here and now is, and one of the things that I look back on and think, okay, what did we do that really started to shine a light almost immediately on the importance of well-being at the beginning of the pandemic, was that we pivoted quickly to what our people needed. And, I think at the beginning that was probably tangible items, right? It was monitors, it was chairs, it was like, how can we get you set up quickly at home? To what is it that you really need to support you and your family? Is it tutoring for your kids to subsidize their homeschooling? Is it, some sort of support for home care for a family member? Is it a leave of absence to give you that time that you need just to kind of sort out everything that's going on with you personally and with your family? And so and I think as that evolved, what we were doing was listening to our employees along the way. So they were telling us what they needed, and we were willing to pivot to give them what they needed. And what was important to us is we didn't take away anything that we'd already offered. We were just constantly evolving, our benefits. I think the other thing that's really important, and where I feel like, we had this kind of aha moment, was realizing that well-being isn't just programmatic. It's also very much about these leadership behaviors, and how do we support our leaders to be able to deliver on those behaviors. I had a conversation, Tessa, the other day. So to your point about, it's like this, we tell people to go be empathetic, but it's like someone doesn't just wake up one day and they're empathetic. And so, I've had leaders come to me and say, Ginny, I know this is important, but I don't know what to do, and I don't know how to do it. And so we start having this conversation, and I start asking them questions, just how are you doing? And I just start having questions focused on them, providing no answers, just asking questions. And they're like, oh my gosh, like this is like been such a great conversation. I'm like, because I just asked about you and I just listened. I go replicate that with each of your team members on your engagement team. That is empathy. I'm like, think about how you felt after 30 minutes of a conversation with me. Just practice that and recognize it's not one and done. Like it is, constantly having those check-in points. And then I think the other thing that's really important and was a turning moment, at least for me and my ability to really talk about how important this was, is, we talk about building trust. And I started really focusing on what does it take to earn trust, and earning trust, you like, and to keep it, because once you have trust, I mean, they can be taken away from you in a heartbeat. And so, I've been talking to a lot of our leaders, even our younger leaders, about earning trust is really about that, having that understanding, having those conversations, being compassionate, but also delivering, because you build those relationships. And over time, a person just inherently trusts you because you've proven that you genuinely care and that you deliver on your promise.
Absolutely. And with that, trust builds loyalty as well. So
exactly.
Very important. I know Michael has a question.
So Jenny, I love all this and, all the things that you're doing to create the well-being, especially when people are having all this turmoil and new needs were popping up. How do you create psychological safety where people can say, I can call up Ginny and just unload on all this stuff that's not great. My partner's drinking too much. I have a child that's autistic that's driving me crazy because now we're home all day, and all this stuff that's not really great to say. How do they feel safe to bring that issue to you?
Well, I think it goes back to what I just said, that earning that trust factor, right? Where, they have come, they over time see that you are willing to have these conversations. You've earned this trust to the point where they can now then confide in you on something that may be very hard for them to talk about. But, the other thing, Michael, is we recognize not everyone is willing to do that. There are, even though I think many of the workforce has really kind of moved toward, this is about me holistically, and my well-being needs to be thought about personally and professionally. Some are not willing to talk to their leaders about personal matters. So, one of the things that, and as a direct result of that, we looked at, what are we offering in terms of for our employees and their family members around having some place to go to talk. And we realized that, we were only giving, our services our benefits were 5 counseling sessions a year. And I'm like, is that really enough? And so we actually last year introduced that every one of our employees and every member of their household gets 25 counseling sessions a year. Oh. And that's part of our benefits package. And it's everything from just from self-help types of activities you can do with a coach to real therapy and getting you aligned to the right type of therapist. Additionally, we have a service where it's called Second MD. I think a lot of our employees have used it in the past for second opinions on physical matters. But we've opened it up to our employees for mental health. If they want a second opinion, if they feel like they're doing all the things they were told to do, but they or their family members still not getting the treatment that they think is right, Second MD is another avenue for them to go to get a second opinion, which has been unheard of in the mental health space.
And on that note, is there any sort of early detection mechanisms you're doing to detect burnout before people get burned out? Is there anything in place on that?
It's interesting you asked that question, because we're just finished a pilot that because we thought of, we were thinking about this when we were doing our work around EY way of working. One of the things we kept hearing from our leaders is like, okay, I want to help my team's well-being, but how do I know what they need? And so we actually just finished piloting a well-being index that really sort of measures around 4 aspects of well-being: physical, mental, financial, and social. It's experiential data. It takes experiential data, which is really just, I guess a fancy way of saying we're surveying our employees about where they're at different points. And then operational data right now. What kind of operational data do we have that can really pinpoint to, is there a consistent level of hours a person is working? Is a person not taking advantage of our disconnect days or their PTO? Is there, and then, it kind of highlights to the leader, where there could be issues so that they can then have conversations, and then it aligns to the benefits and programs that we have that can help that individual.
So one kind of follow-up I have to, all this incredible work that you're doing internally within the organization and really focusing on your employees' engagement and well-being and the health of their family. How are you seeing this translate to the relationship you have with the EY clients? How do you see, or are you seeing a direct correlation between the, well-being of your employees and the way that correlates with customer satisfaction or your client engagement, or any other kind of metric that you might use to look at the ways that employees are working with their clients?
Yeah, so absolutely, back to that well-being index we just talked. One of the data points for sure that, that we look at is our satisfaction surveys from our clients and what they're saying. So then that also helps us really kind of pinpoint, where there might be, issues or concerns or things that we might want to address with our, team members. And so that absolutely is a part. But I think, your question sort of sparked something interesting that, maybe isn't directly related, but it, the conversations that we're having with our clients. When we are able to come and talk to them about the importance of well-being and really thinking about the importance of it, empathetic leadership, it sparks a whole different type of conversation because they're going through this as well. And then trying to figure out, what can they do for their employees so they can bring them their best selves. And so the conversations are much more robust. And I think it also helps us, develop a relationship at a different level with our clients. I'm also going to have to just advertise this, but, we just announced that we're appointing a chief well-being officer. And it was really important to us that wasn't just in title only. The individual that we promoted is Frank Giampietro, and he's a partner with EY, and he is very deep in this work, and he works extensively with our clients within the market around this. He feeds into a lot of research that's happening around in this space, and so we wanted to make sure that we were really bringing our very best around this discussion so that we could, help our clients and continue to, improve and evolve ourselves on this journey.
Ginnie, that has to be like a first of a kind, right? Because I haven't heard, has anyone done this before, or this is kind of a unique
Well,
setup?
I think organizations are really looking at, are all looking at how they can bring attention, how they can, because what we noticed at EY, and I think when we've talked to others, they're feeling the same, is that we're all doing these great things, and they're very siloed sometimes, and it is very hard for your employees and your leaders to really understand the full breadth of what you're being able to bring. And so, by I think really putting a light on it, like chief well-being officer, now we can put everything under an umbrella, and we can constantly look at the actions we're taking, and are those the best actions? Are these the best benefits? Sometimes you laugh and you're like, you talk about, well, wouldn't it be great if we did X? And they're like, Ginnie, we already do the X. And it's so now there's this just really great way that we can then just, I think, elevate it, and our journey can, we can speed up our journey, if you will, that we're on with, focusing on well-being. I think, and I kind of look at it, chief well-being officers very, almost, I can analogize it, if you will, to like when we appointed our DEI leader decades ago. We had to show that there was a tone at the top, that this was important. This was at the board and leadership agenda, top of their agenda. And so you needed to appoint someone who is then going to then drive it through the organization, through all of our processes. And so, that's what our hope is.
That makes sense, because it shows that you're all in on it. You're not just like a lot of companies, and just between us, and I guess all the people who are going to be watching, listen, there's a lot who say, they talk the talk, but they don't really do it. So this shows, hey, we're putting our money where our mouth is. You're putting the person in there, and you'll have kind of a whole, group of people around Frank and building up. So it shows that this is something really important to your company. And I hope, it's really cool. I hope from this, when we, after this is all over, we edit and clean it up and we post it, that maybe that'll inspire other companies to follow suit. Not that they'll steal your thunder, but I think that's something we want to, we like to share. We want other companies to do that too, because that would be remarkable.
Oh, I think it'd be the best for all of us, right? All organizations, if we, if somehow we could find what works for that particular organization, to put it under one umbrella, for sure.
And Ginnie, if you could talk to CEOs around the world that are intrigued by the chief well-being officer, but they might look back and say, okay, well, what am I going to get out of it? What does success look like if everything works great with that new position? What good things are you expecting at EY?
Well, the easy answer would be to say, I don't need a chief well-being officer anymore.
So if he does too well, Frank's out of a job. So this is like all right, this is an interesting challenge to him. Okay.
Yeah. So, obviously, we're kind of in the middle of the great resignation, as I keep talking. So, obviously my thing would be, lower attrition, have higher engagement scores. But, my vision, or my North Star, if you will, is really an EY in which everyone belongs and thrives. And that comes across like this pilot that I mentioned earlier that we did on the Wellbeing Index, and was very informative to us. And so we're going to have the Index 2.0 that we're going to release internally here really quickly. And I think about, if I could take those scores, and we see exponential improvement, and we continue to see that improvement, and we have leaders who actually get the importance of empathetic leadership and how important it is to engage with our people. I think it's going to be much more experiential than it will be anything else. And it's, what our employees tell us. But I don't know. I have great hope for, what this could do for our employees personally and professionally. But I really feel like it's going to be how the organization thrives as a result of, our focus on this. I always say human resilience, when you're in the people business, human resilience drives business resilience. So, so let's see.
Absolutely. And one thing it got me thinking about is, as we're looking to the next generation of workers coming up. So we've got Gen Z who's, heading to college and graduating in the next 3 to 4 years. They're totally different. First of all, they're pandemic kids. So they've grown up in this kind of environment that's been a little bit strange to say the least. I have teenage kids, so it's been hard to watch, but also they are really values focused. They want autonomy over their careers. They're very creative. They're very technologically savvy. So it sounds like EY is also preparing for the future, in the fact that the future workforce is going to be expecting companies to care about their mental health, and will provide balance, and will provide these level of resources. And so I really commend you on this move. The one question I had was, given this is a chief exec type, C-suite role, how does this person, and maybe this hasn't even been worked out yet since it's just been announced, but how is this person working with the other kind of senior executives across other disciplines, whether it's finance or marketing? Will he be really looking at the way different operations within EY work, and how people are working, and look at ways to evolve and modify and really, get to some of the challenges and the work conditions in these different disciplines, or how will he interact with the other disciplines?
Well, I think as a prime example, right after this podcast, Frank and I are presenting to our entire tax service line. So that's about 10,000 plus professionals. Next Tuesday, we are presenting and talking about the importance of well-being, empathetic leadership, and our EY way of working, and how all this ties together with our consulting practice. And so absolutely, this is front and center with our business unit leaders. It's already embedded in our board priorities for the year. So our board priorities around inspiring our people. It's there, deepening a culture of care, and center to that is well-being. So I think, I think I tend not to, let's do grand announcements. It's like, let's walk the talk and, people can feel it and see results. And so I think, I'm hopeful. But that was, Tess, I couldn't agree with you more, because that's incredibly important for us to have that connection right away. And it was unanimous. The board said we need this. And so I wanted to make sure that all of our leaders across all the disciplines of the firm were 100% bought into this appointment. So
Ginny, I might want to work for you now. But as we wrap up, I could spend all day with you. We're all drinking the same Kool-Aid.
You're teasing. Can I tell you something? Wait, I didn't interrupt. You're teasing. I'm back in my mind. I'll be totally honest, because my son just graduated from college. I'm like, oh, should I ask Jeannie, or is that weird to say it's you? Because seriously, it's refreshing to hear. I think we're all of a certain age. I'm a Gen-Xer, where when we went into the workforce, no one talked about this. No one cared. No one could care less whether I was, happy or not happy, or I was motivated or not motivated. They just cared, did I do my job? And fast forward to now, and as Tess was saying, now is a different world. But I know with my kids, they're Gen Zs. They want a job with purpose. They want to work for a company that champions social causes and political causes, and it's way different. So this is just wild. It's kind of revolutionary if you think about everything that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, and to that point, Jack, when I think about what the pandemic and what happened during the pandemic, and something good that came out of it was, obviously the social justice movement and getting a spotlight on that, but the fact that corporations now are expected to lean in. So to your point, a younger generation, they want to work for an organization. They want to know what their voice is around these issues. And I gotta tell you, I remember when I was their age. I mean, I'm sure you do too. It's like, okay, I maybe talked to my family about it, maybe my church, but like I wasn't, or a community outreach, but I never expected my employer
No,
to
not at
talk
all.
about it. And I mean, it is an expectation. It's like, not only talk about it, but you have a voice around this. You have a point of view. So I couldn't agree with you more. And I think one of the things that helps us a little bit is that, I mean, if you look at our workforce, about 2/3 of it is under the age of 35. So we are constantly having to stay in step or ahead of, what is expected of the future workforce. So
Harvard needs what you have. I've been there 11 years. I've never gotten a hug.
Oh, well, yeah. I hug a lot.
I don't know. Are you hugging your out? Wait. Does that happen in EY? Is that part of it?
Yeah. Well, I asked for permission, but yes, I hug a lot.
Okay. Is there anything that we didn't ask you, Jeannie, that you'd like to share? That's any other interesting developments at EY?
No, I think the only thing I would underscore, and I mean, hopefully this came out, but I wouldn't mind being explicit about it, is that when I talk about empathetic leadership, when we as an organization do our surveys that we did, when we go and talk to our clients about it, this isn't just a senior leadership requirement. This isn't just saying to our senior leadership, you got to go take a bunch of trainings and figure out how to be empathetic. This is a leadership skill that the future. It's not, as we talked about before, that this isn't a moment in time. This is a movement. And we really need to get all of our leaders, whether you're a senior leader, you are a person managing a project, at a current point in time, we all need to embrace the importance of this skill. And so, if I were to give any organization some advice, if you look at your leadership training, how can you adjust that leadership training to ensure that you're focusing on that development of that skill set?
That's great. And if you don't mind, maybe what we could do, as you mentioned about Frank taking on this new well-being, maybe 3 months later or so, maybe we could invite you and Frank back, and we could just talk about what he's doing, what lessons are learned, how effective, because that could be really cool. Just to kind of lay out in real. So here's, we have this person, and this is what's happening. This is what's getting done. This is, and you mentioned kind of doing these micro, surveys, what everybody is saying. And then also it will be interesting to see retention rates. Are you keeping people more? Is this is this making people stay and not being tempted to leave? Because as someone who's been in executive recruiting for 25 years, I know without a shadow of a doubt, if you have your core group of people that you feel comfortable with and you like, and you feel management respects you and they believe in you and they appreciate you, it's hard for me to poach somebody out, because they're like, it's not worth the extra money to leave, because I enjoy what I do. I have a network of people I love working with. Management respects me. They treat me like an adult, and I'm going to stay. So it'd be really interesting to see if, that, and I imagine it's all going to play out that way. So it'd be cool to kind of bring it forth to people. And once again, for other companies to hear it, I think it could be a movement which would be great for everyone. It just improve the lives of everyone.
No,
Yeah.
we would love that. I
Okay,
couldn't
cool.
agree with you more in terms of the importance and how it could really change, just the whole workforce and how we think about work. But yeah, Frank and I would love that.
That's fantastic. That's great. Test Mike, any last minute questions or?
I wish it was a longer show, but yeah, I can't wait to meet up with you all again, and have a great holiday, and thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ginnie. I really appreciate it.